Right now, while your child is on that screen, their brain is being physically restructured, and most parents have absolutely no idea it's happening. Screen time isn't just entertainment. It's actively rewiring how your child focuses, how they feel, and how their brain is being built every single session. We're going to show you exactly what's happening inside that brain and why the biggest signs have been hiding in plain sight. By the end of this, you'll recognize things you've already been seeing, and you'll know exactly what to do. That's what we're going to change today. Why kids love screens. So much relatable start. Imagine it's in the evening. Dinner isn't ready. You're running on fumes, and your child is somewhere in the house, quiet, completely absorbed in whatever's on that screen. And honestly, that's a relief. Most parents use screens exactly like this as a tool, as a breather, as 20 minutes of peace to just function. There's no judgment here, none. But then comes the moment the screen goes off and suddenly you're not dealing with a calm child anymore. You're dealing with tears, bargaining, just one more video, a meltdown that seems completely out of proportion to what just happened. And you've probably thought, is this just their age, their personality, is this normal? Here's the thing, the behavior is normal in the sense that millions of children do it. But the reason behind it goes much deeper than most parents realize. Because what looks like a tantrum about a tablet is actually something happening inside the brain itself. Think of two kids, both are 5. How screen time trains your child's brain years old. One spends 3 hours a day on fast-paced video content, short clips, autoplay, constant novelty. The other plays outside, reads, gets genuinely bored sometimes. Fast forward a few years, their brains will literally look different. Not figuratively, literally, structurally different. Scientists can see it on a scan. That's because of something called neuroplasticity. Your child's brain isn't a fixed object. It's more like wet cement, especially in these early years. It's forming connections at a staggering pace, pruning the ones it doesn't use, reinforcing the ones it does, and eventually that cement starts to set. Repetition becomes wiring. So whatever your child does repeatedly, their brain builds around. And right now, screens are doing the training. Sounds simple enough until you understand exactly what kind of training is happening and what it's doing to the reward system. Let's start with dopamine and screen addiction in kids' dopamine. Most people call it the pleasure chemical, but that's not quite right. Dopamine isn't about pleasure, it's about anticipation, the drive to seek, the pull toward reward. Every time something surprising or exciting happens, your brain releases a hit of dopamine. It's saying, that was good, do it again, find more of that. Now think about what well-designed children's content actually does. Fast cuts, bright colors, constant novelty, a new joke every 10 seconds. Autoplay that removes even the friction of choosing what to watch next. Every single one of those elements is a dopamine trigger. You've probably seen the moment your child finishes a video and immediately before the next one even starts, their face drops like a light went off. The energy just leaves. That's not attitude. That's their brain's dopamine levels dropping below their normal baseline. It's a dopamine crash. And here's why that matters so much. Children's brains are significantly more sensitive to dopamine than adult brains. Research suggests the reward systems in developing brains respond more intensely and take longer to reset. So, every session with fast-paced screen content is essentially a dopamine workout. The brain gets very good at expecting frequent, intense rewards, and then real life shows up where rewards are slower, where you have to wait for the punchline, where things are sometimes just boring. Real life cannot compete with something that is engineered to always be exciting. The brain, having adapted to expect constant stimulation, starts treating ordinary experiences as dull, unworthy of attention. But this doesn't stop at what your child enjoys, because what's happening to the reward system? It's doing the exact same thing to their ability to focus. You've probably screen time and attention span problems noticed it. You ask your child to sit with a book, a real one, where the pictures don't move, and within a minute they're fidgeting, done, or think about homework. They sit down, pencil in hand, and within 2 minutes they need a snack, a break, to check something, anything but the thing in front of them. Parents often chalk this up to personality, He's always been high energy, she just can't sit still. But here's what the research is actually showing us. Sustained attention is a skill, and like all skills, it only develops through practice. Fast-paced screen content eliminates that practice entirely. Fast cuts and sudden noises actually hijack your child's orienting reflex, a biological survival instinct meant to spot sudden danger. The screen is forcing their attention, which means there's no moment of sustained focus required because the screen never actually demands it. Studies comparing children's media exposure with their ability to focus on slower, more demanding tasks have found a consistent pattern. Higher exposure to rapid-fire content correlates with greater difficulty maintaining attention when it matters most, in school, in reading, in problem-solving. The exact places where attention determines long-term success. It's not that your child is broken. Their brain has simply been trained by high-speed content to expect constant change, and slow things now feel neurologically uncomfortable. And here's where it gets personal, because the next thing screens are changing, you've seen it. Every parent has. It's the explosion that happens the moment you turn the screen off. So, let's go back to that moment. Emotional reactions. After screen time. The screen goes off and the explosion follows. What's actually happening there? When a child is absorbed in a screen, especially fast-paced, highly stimulating content, their nervous system is being regulated by the device. The stimulation is doing emotional work for them, keeping them calm, keeping them engaged. In a very real sense, the device is managing their emotional state, but it isn't actually calming them down. It acts like a digital anesthetic. It captivates their attention so completely that they simply tune out their physical body and their big feelings. They aren't regulated, they are just deeply distracted. So when the device is removed, it's not just that something fun went away. It's that the thing managing their emotional equilibrium was suddenly taken away. The brain reacts the way it would to any sudden loss of regulation, distress, dysregulation, overwhelm. What looks from the outside like a tantrum is on the inside closer to withdrawal from stimulation. And here's why this matters long-term. Emotional regulation, the ability to manage your own feelings, to self-soothe, to recover from frustration without falling apart, is one of the most critical skills a child can build. It underpins academic resilience, friendships, mental health, but it only develops through practice, through sitting with uncomfortable feelings and learning gradually to move through them. When screens consistently step in as the emotional regulator, that practice doesn't happen. The brain outsources the job instead of building the capacity itself. This isn't about blame. This is about understanding what's actually happening beneath the surface, so you can make choices that help. But the most surprising finding, the one researchers are only beginning to fully grasp, isn't about behavior at all. It's about the architecture of the brain itself. Researchers have now how screens affect brain development conducted multiple large-scale studies looking at the brains of children with different levels of screen exposure. Some of the most significant findings come from the Adolescent Brain Cognitive Development Study, the largest long-term brain development study ever conducted in the United States, tracking more than 11,000 children, 11,000 kids. And what researchers saw in their brain scans was a measurable structural change. Specifically, the outer layer of the brain, which processes information, was maturing and thinning out prematurely. While science is still working to definitively prove if screen time causes this shift or just strongly correlates with it, the pattern is undeniable. These are the parts of the brain your child is going to rely on for school, for relationships, for navigating their entire life. It's not catastrophic, but it's real, and it's happening during the exact years when none of it can be redone. Because here's the timing that matters. The period between birth and age 12 is arguably the most critical window in human brain development. The prefrontal cortex, the region governing decision, focus, emotional control, long-term thinking, doesn't fully mature until the mid-20s, but its foundations are being laid right now. At the exact stage when the brain is building its most important infrastructure, it's being shaped by a form of stimulation that evolution never prepared it for. Artificial, relentless, instant, and it doesn't stop when the screen turns off. The blue light from these devices suppresses melatonin, quietly delaying your child's sleep. Because a child's brain does its most critical building, pruning, and emotional resetting, including moving everything they learn that day into long-term memory. While they sleep, heavy screen use impacts their brain twice, once during the day and again by stealing the recovery they need at night. So, what does all of this actually look like at home? The attention that drifts mid-sentence, like the emotions that crash when a screen goes off. The boredom that feels completely unbearable. Those aren't personality quirks, they're visible signs of a brain being trained in real time, and to really understand the full cost, we need to talk about something that rarely comes up in these conversations. Not what screens do, but what they quietly replace. Do you? What screen time is replacing? Hidden cost. Remember being bored as a kid? Like genuinely nothing to do. Summer afternoon bored where you'd stare at the ceiling, wander around the house, complain that there was nothing to do until eventually out of sheer necessity you invented something. That boredom had a job. It was building something inside you, and most children today never get the chance to feel it. Screens don't just occupy time, they fill silence. And that silence, it had a purpose. Boredom is the seedbed of imagination. Neuroscientists actually have a name for this. It activates what's called the default mode network. Think of it as the brain's background imagination engine, and it only powers on when we are doing absolutely nothing. When a child has nothing to reach for, that engine kicks in and the brain has to generate its own stimulation. That's where creativity is born, where children invent games, build worlds, solve made-up problems. That internal work is irreplaceable. And screens eliminate the conditions for it to happen. Then there's real social interaction. The awkward, slow, sometimes frustrating process of playing with other children, negotiating, reading faces, navigating conflict without a mute button or a reset. These moments build the neural pathways for empathy, communication, and social intelligence. They don't transfer from a screen in slow, sustained play, blocks, drawing, building, pretending, the kind where nothing explodes and nothing levels up. This is where deep thinking develops. Patience, spatial reasoning, the ability to stay with something hard. It's not just what screens do, it's what they quietly take away. Now, before we go any further, I want to be completely honest with you about something. Not all screen time is healthy screen time balance explained equal. That matters. And the research actually backs it up. A child video calling a grandparent using a screen to genuinely connect is having a social experience that serves development. A child watching a slow narrative story with a beginning, middle, and end is experiencing something meaningfully different from rapid-fire short-form clips. Educational content that pauses, asks questions, invites the child to respond, that engages the brain in a participatory way. That's not the same as passive consumption. The research isn't saying screens are the enemy. It's saying context matters, content matters, pace, music matters, and the younger the child, the more all of it matters. The American Academy of Pediatrics recommends avoiding screens for children under 18 months, except for video calls. From 18 to 24 months, if you introduce screens, they advise choosing high-quality programming and watching it with your child. And for ages 2 to 5, they recommend limiting use to 1 hour a day. But beyond the numbers, what matters most is the why behind your choices. This isn't about removing screens from your child's life, it's about understanding them. So you're choosing intentionally instead of defaulting automatically. And that leads us to the part that actually changes things. What you can do starting today. How to manage screen time. 5 practical tips. So here's what you actually do with all of this. 5 things, practical, realistic, and none of them require turning your household upside down. First, notice the pace of what your child is watching, not just the content, but the speed of it. Fast-cutting, rapidly changing content is significantly more stimulating than slow narrative storytelling. Choosing a slower-paced show over a rapid one, even occasionally, shifts what kind of training the brain receives. Second, create transitions, not cutoffs. One of the biggest triggers for post-screen meltdowns is abruptness. Instead of screen off now, try a 5-minute warning, then a 2-minute warning, then a clear next activity waiting. The brain needs a runway to land, give it one. Third, protect boredom. This is counterintuitive, but one of the most powerful things you can do for your child's developing brain is to not fill every quiet moment. Resist the reflex to hand over the device the second they say, "I'm bored." That discomfort is productive. Let it breathe. Fourth, co-view when you can. Watching alongside your child and talking about what you're seeing, asking questions, making connections, transforms passive screen time into an active experience. You become the bridge between the screen and the real world. And fifth, replace, don't just remove. When you reduce screen time, have something ready, a sensory bin, building blocks, an outdoor prompt. The goal isn't deprivation, it's redirection toward the kinds of experiences that give the developing brain what it actually needs. None of these require a dramatic overhaul. There's small, consistent shifts, but small, consistent shifts are exactly what reshapes a developing brain. We started today by why small changes matter long-term, asking what screen time is actually doing to your child's brain, and the answer goes deeper than most parents ever get to hear. It's shaping reward pathways, it's training attention, it's affecting emotional regulation, and it's influencing the structural development of the brain at its most critical window. Think about what you've seen lately: the fidgeting at the dinner table, the meltdown over a tablet, the boredom that seemed impossible to satisfy, the attention that slipped away mid-sentence. Those weren't random behaviors. You are watching a brain being trained in real time, and now you know what you're actually looking at. You are not powerless in this. You never were. The same brain that's been shaped this way can be guided in a new direction. Brains that have been trained one way respond to change, especially when the adults around them are paying attention, and you're paying attention. That already makes a difference because screen time isn't just something your child uses, it's something that is shaping who they become, and now you know what to do about it. If this video helped you see something differently, if it gave a name to something you'd already been observing in your child, share it with one other parent who might need to hear it too. And if you have any question regarding any topic of this video, let me know. I'll answer as much as I can.